Welcome back to Whispers of the Universe. Here, the noise of the day begins to fade, and the silence of the night arrives like a gentle tide. You do not need to do anything right now. Just allow yourself to rest, to soften, to be here. Take a slow breath in and let it out, longer than you took it in. Again, in and out. Notice how even the smallest act of breathing can be infinite, because each breath leads to the next, and the next, and the next in an endless rhythm that carries you through life. Tonight, we are beginning a journey into a concept that has always slipped away from human grasp: infinity, a word that seems so simple. Yet it stretches beyond language, beyond thought, beyond the limits of what our minds can hold. As you lie here, perhaps with your eyes gently closing, imagine that you are standing before a horizon. The horizon stretches endlessly. You walk towards it, but it always moves further away. It does not resist you, it does not block you, it simply expands. And in that endless expansion, there is a quiet comfort, because infinity does not demand you to reach it. It simply invites you to rest beneath its sky. Let the idea of infinity not be a problem to solve tonight, not a puzzle to exhaust your mind, but rather a companion, a presence that sits with you in the quiet, reminding you that you are part of something vast, something without edges, something that will always hold you. Feel how your body softens into the bed, the weight of your head, your shoulders, your arms. Each part of you letting go, sinking gently, like stars sinking into the dark of night. Infinity begins here. Not in equations, not in distant galaxies, not in words on a page, but in the way your chest rises and falls endlessly, in the way your thoughts drift and return endlessly, in the way the night stretches out before you with no clear beginning or end. So let yourself drift with me into the story of infinity. A story told not to keep you awake, but to guide you gently, slowly into rest. You do not need to travel far to meet infinity. It is not only in the stars above or in the endless numbers of mathematics. It lives quietly in the small experiences of everyday life, waiting for you to notice. Think of the night sky. On a clear evening, you look up and see countless stars scattered like silver dust. No matter how long you look, there is always another star, another spark, another distant light. The sky does not end where your eyes stop. It continues, stretching beyond your sight, beyond your imagination. That is infinity softly present, hidden in the silence above. Now think of the ocean. Stand at the edge of the shore, listening to the rhythm of the waves. One wave rises, falls, then another comes, and another, and another. There is no final wave. The ocean does not say this is the last one. It breathes endlessly, just as you breathe endlessly. Infinity whispers here in the repetition that never tires, in the motion that never ends. And think of the horizon. You walk across a wide plain, perhaps a desert, perhaps a field, and there it is, the line where earth meets sky. You move closer, yet it always moves away. No matter how far you go, the horizon keeps its distance, gently, patiently. It is not mocking you, it is not cruel, it is simply endless. A reminder that infinity is not a goal to reach, but a companion that walks with you. In these moments, infinity does not overwhelm. It does not appear as a complex formula or a frightening abyss. It appears as something familiar, something tender. The stars that shine above you, the waves that rise and fall, the horizon that waits ahead. Let these images sink into your mind as you rest. Imagine the stars above your closed eyes sparkling without number. Imagine the waves in your breath, each inhale and exhale like the tide. Imagine the horizon just beyond your thoughts, always there, always stretching, always inviting. Infinity, then, is not distant. It is here in the ordinary things you already know. It lives in the endless heartbeat of the earth, in the endless cycles of night and day, in the endless softness of breath. And as you drift tonight, let these familiar infinities hold you. The sky holds you. The sea holds you. The horizon holds you. You do not need to chase them. You only need to rest in their presence and let their endlessness lull you into peace. Infinity is not only a concept for philosophers and scientists. Long before equations were written or telescopes lifted toward the sky, people looked into the dark of night and felt something endless. They gave it names, they told stories, they wove it into their prayers, their myths, their visions of the divine. Close your eyes now and imagine sitting beside a fire thousands of years ago. The night is wide, the stars are countless, and the flames crackle softly. Someone tells a story that time has no beginning, that the gods are eternal, that life is reborn again and again. The voices are quiet, but the ideas are vast, carrying you into a sense of something greater than yourself. In India, ancient sages spoke of the Kalpa, a cosmic cycle stretching over billions of years, where the universe is created, sustained, destroyed, and then reborn again. Creation is not a single event. It is a rhythm like breathing, like the waves of the ocean. Infinity lives in this cycle, in the eternal dance of beginning and ending that never truly ends. In China, the Taoists whispered of the Tao, the way that has no origin and no limit. The Tao flows without boundary, shaping all things yet never exhausted. When you rest tonight, imagine the Tao not as a doctrine, but as a river of silence carrying you gently, endlessly forward. There is no shore, only the flow itself. This too is infinity, a principle of life that has no edges. In the Middle East, priests of Babylon looked up at the endless stars, imagining the heavens as infinite realms. In Egypt, the flooding of the Nile was seen as a cycle without end, death and rebirth written into the land itself. Every year the waters rose, every year they fell, and in this endless rhythm the people saw eternity. In Greece, philosophers wrestled with infinity, often with suspicion. Aristotle believed actual infinity could not exist in the physical world, only in thought. And yet, even he spoke of the eternal, the unmoved mover, the divine principle that had no beginning and no end. Infinity was a shadow in their thinking, both feared and revered. And in many faiths, infinity became the very description of the divine. God as eternal, without limit, without end. To say forever was not to speak of time alone, but to touch on the infinite nature of being. When people prayed to something infinite, they were not only asking for power, they were seeking comfort. Because what is infinite cannot be broken, cannot be lost. And in the arms of the infinite, the finite human heart finds rest. As you lie here tonight, let yourself feel that sense of sacred infinity. It does not matter what tradition you come from. Infinity has always been a symbol of the eternal stars, the eternal cycles, the eternal silence that holds all things. Infinity as a sacred symbol is not a problem to solve. It is a reassurance. It whispers you are part of something that does not end. Even as your body sleeps, even as your thoughts drift, you are carried by an endless presence. Rest in that thought. Infinity, divine and endless, is holding you now. You do not need to reach it. You are already inside it. Long before modern science, before telescopes, before blackboards filled with numbers, human beings sat in quiet places and wondered. They wondered about the sky, about time, about change, about the endlessness that seemed to live inside even the simplest things. And slowly, philosophy began to take its first steps into infinity. Close your eyes and imagine ancient Greece. The sea glimmers in the distance. The air is warm and a thinker sits beneath an olive tree. He looks at a stone in his hand. He wonders, can this stone be divided forever? If he breaks it in half, then again will there always be something smaller left. This is not only a question about rocks. It is a question about the structure of the world. It is a question about infinity hidden inside matter. The Greek philosopher Anaximander spoke of the apeiron, the boundless. He imagined that all things came from an infinite source, a substance without limit, without shape, without beginning or end. From the apeiron the world was born, and into the apeiron the world would return. Infinity was not only a number to him, it was the very womb of existence. Later, Zeno of Elea created his paradoxes. He asked if motion is real. Why does it hide endless divisions? To walk across a room, one must go halfway. And before that, halfway to halfway. And before that again, endlessly. How then can one ever arrive? Infinity hides inside even the smallest step. These paradoxes were not meant to paralyze, but to awaken. They revealed that infinity is not distant. It is woven into every motion, every division, every thought. And for the Greeks, infinity was both a puzzle and a presence, something that lingered at the edge of reason. Now imagine India far from Greece, where sages meditated beside rivers. They spoke of time not as a line with one beginning, but as vast cycles. A day of Brahma lasts billions of human years, and yet it is only one day in an infinite rhythm. Creation, destruction, rebirth. No single end, no single beginning. Infinity as a circle, turning endlessly. Here infinity is not frightening. It is natural like the seasons. It is the great wheel reminding people that what ends is always reborn. And in that rebirth there is comfort. Now drift eastward again into ancient China. Philosophers there spoke of the Tao. The Tao is the way that flows without limit. It has no origin. It cannot be measured. It is like water yielding soft, yet endless in its power. The Tao does not rush to a destination. It simply flows, as time flows, as breath flows. Infinity was not argued. It was lived, experienced in silence. From Greece to India to China, early philosophers approached infinity differently. For some, it was a boundary to fear a problem that made motion impossible. For others, it was a cycle to embrace a rhythm to trust. For still others, it was a mystery beyond words, a flow that holds all things. As you lie here tonight, imagine walking alongside these thinkers. Beside the olive tree, you hear Zeno's paradox. By the river, you hear the sages whisper of cycles. On the mountain, you feel the Tao flowing like wind. Infinity, in its first steps through philosophy, was never one shape. It was many. A puzzle, a circle, a river. And though thousands of years separate us from those voices, their wonder is the same wonder you feel tonight, looking into the endless sky of your own mind. So let your thoughts drift back into that silence. Infinity does not demand an answer. It only asks that you walk with it slowly, gently into the mystery. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a path. It is simple, flat, stretching from where you are to a tree in the distance. The tree is not far, only a short walk away. You take a breath, ready to step forward. And then a voice, the voice of an ancient philosopher named Zeno of Elea, whispers, "Wait. Before you arrive, you must first travel halfway." So you picture it. From where you stand to the tree is a distance. You cut that distance in half. You walk that half. But now the distance left is still something. Zeno whispers again, "Before you reach the tree, you must first travel halfway of what remains." So you walk halfway again, but still a little remains. Half of half of half, and again, and again, and again. Each step brings you closer, yet there is always another halfway, always a smaller distance to cover, always one more task before the journey is complete. Zeno's paradox is like a dream that never finishes a step, that never lands a promise, that always slips forward. Now imagine the great runner Achilles. Strong, swift, fast as the wind, he challenges a tortoise to a race. Out of kindness, he gives the tortoise a head start. The tortoise begins crawling along the path. Achilles sprints forward, but Zeno whispers again. Before Achilles can catch the tortoise, he must first reach the point where the tortoise began. By the time he does, the tortoise has moved a little further. Achilles runs again. But before he catches up, the tortoise has moved again, and again, and again. Step after step, the tortoise is always ahead, if only by a fraction. Infinity hides in the chase, making the impossible seem true. The fastest runner cannot catch the slowest creature. These paradoxes are playful, but they are not only games. They reveal something about the way infinity sits inside motion. To move you must cross infinite halves. To chase you must overcome infinite steps. And yet we move, we arrive. Achilles does overtake the tortoise. You do reach the tree. The paradox lies not in the world itself, but in the way our minds wrestle with infinity. Close your eyes now and picture yourself walking toward a horizon. Every step you take is real. Every step covers distance, yet the horizon still moves away. This is the living paradox of infinity. We move within it, through it, carried by it, never escaping it. Zeno's whispers are not meant to frighten you. They are meant to soften your sense of certainty. They remind you that even the simplest actions, walking, running, reaching, contain hidden infinities. Infinity is not only in the stars or the endless ocean. It is in your very step, in the beat of your heart, in the rhythm of your breath. Think of your breathing now. Each inhale is only half of what could be. Each exhale is only half of what remains. There is no final breath until the last one, and even then life continues beyond in the endless cycle of the world. You live inside a paradox, and yet it carries you gently, as naturally as night follows day. Infinity. Zeno teaches is not solved by winning a race or finishing a walk. It is felt in the endlessness of motion itself. The paradox does not need an answer. It only needs to be lived slowly, step by step, endlessly. As you rest tonight, let Zeno's voice fade into the background. Let the tortoise crawl quietly in your imagination. Let Achilles run swift and eternal. Let the halves divide forever until they become soft, like fading ripples on water. You do not need to resolve the paradox. You only need to let it carry you into the vastness of rest. Infinity does not only live in the stars above or in the paradoxes of philosophy, it also whispers in something as simple as counting. Numbers which seem so ordinary are in truth a door into the infinite. Let us begin together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each number feels solid, clear, a step like a stone laid across a river. 5, 6, 7. The path continues, and as you keep going, there is no end. You can always add one more. You can always take another step. The river does not have a far shore. It stretches endlessly, each number like a stone placed in water that flows forever. Children learn to count before they understand what infinity is. A child may ask, "What is the biggest number?" And the gentle answer is, there is no biggest number. For whatever number you say, you can always add one more, and then another, and another. The sequence never ends. Infinity hides in the act of simply continuing. Now think about even numbers. 2, 4, 6, 8. They go on forever. Or odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7. They too stretch endlessly. At first it seems strange. How can half of all numbers still be infinite? But that is the mystery. Each infinite set still contains infinity within it. Now think of prime numbers, numbers that can only be divided by themselves, and 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. They appear irregular, scattered like stars. But they too never stop. Mathematicians have searched for the largest prime. There is none. For every prime discovered, another waits beyond. The primes are infinite, a constellation without end. Numbers reveal a quiet truth. Infinity does not need to be grand. It does not need to be cosmic. It lives in the act of counting, in the certainty that you will never reach the final number. You may stop, but the sequence does not. It is always there, waiting to continue stretching beyond the horizon of thought. Now let us turn to fractions. Take 1, divide it by 2. You have 1/2. Divide it again. 1/4. Again. 1/8. Again. 1/16. The pieces get smaller and smaller, but the process never stops. You can always cut, further divide, further shrink further. No matter how tiny, there is always room for another division. Infinity lives not only in the endless large, but also in the endless small. And consider decimals, the number pi 3.144159. It goes on forever, never repeating, never stopping. The square root of 2, 1.414213. Another endless string. No matter how many digits you write, there are more beyond. A river of digits flowing into the dark, endless, unreachable. When you breathe tonight, imagine each breath as a number. Inhale 1, exhale 2, inhale 3, exhale 4. Your life becomes a sequence, and though it has a beginning and an end, the rhythm of breath itself carries the feeling of infinity, because it repeats without end, cycle after cycle, tide after tide. Numbers remind us that infinity is both near and intimate. You do not need a telescope to find it. You do not need a laboratory. You can hold infinity in your hands. When you count your fingers, when you divide an apple, when you imagine one more step in a line of thought. Infinity in numbers also teaches humility. Mathematicians, even the greatest, cannot capture the whole of it. They can describe patterns, create formulas, glimpse hidden structures. But infinity always stretches further beyond what can be written. Every formula, no matter how clever, is only a lantern held up to a night that has no end. Now close your eyes and picture numbers as stars, each one twinkling, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You try to count them, but there are always more. The sky of numbers is endless, and in that endlessness there is a strange peace, for you are reminded that you do not need to reach the last star, the last number. It is enough to drift among them, to let the infinite sequence carry you like a lullaby. Numbers flow like water, they march like footsteps, they shine like stars. They are infinite in every direction, and as you rest tonight, you rest inside their rhythm, countless, endless, infinite. Infinity seems simple at first glance. You count the stars, you divide a distance, you imagine endless time. But for thousands of years, people assumed infinity was only one thing, one vast ocean, immeasurable but uniform. Then, in the 19th century, a quiet, determined mathematician named Georg Cantor revealed something astonishing. Infinity is not just one size. There are many infinities. Some are larger than others. Close your eyes and imagine a vast library. On one shelf, you see all the natural numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 stretching onward without end. This is an infinity, simple, clear, countable. You can imagine listing them in a line, even if the line never finishes. Cantor called this a countable infinity. Now walk further into the library. There is another shelf filled with fractions, 1/2, 1/3, 3/4, 5/7. At first, it seems impossible. Are there not more fractions than whole numbers? But Cantor showed a surprising truth. The set of fractions is still the same size of infinity as the set of whole numbers. You can pair them one by one forever. This infinity is endless, but still countable. Now turn a corner. You see another shelf vast beyond measure. It contains not whole numbers, not fractions, but all the decimals between 0 and 1. Numbers like 0.1, 0.11, 0.111, 0.1010101, and also numbers like the square root of 2 divided by 10, or pi divided by 10, with digits that wander endlessly, never repeating. This infinity is different, because no matter how you try, you cannot list them all. They are uncountable, flowing in every possible pattern, every possible arrangement, without repetition, without end. This infinity is larger. Cantor called it the continuum. The discovery shocked the world. For the first time, infinity was not a single horizon, but a landscape of horizons, each farther than the last. One infinity could be bigger than another. The infinity of the real numbers was strictly larger than the infinity of the whole numbers. And beyond even that, Cantor showed there may be yet greater infinities climbing like steps into the unreachable sky. Pause now and imagine this ladder of infinities. At the bottom, the natural numbers 1, 2, 3. Above them, the rationals still countable, still paired step by step. Above that, the reals uncountable, vast as an ocean compared to the stepping stones of the integers. And beyond, perhaps greater and greater infinities rising endlessly, each beyond comprehension. Cantor's work was not easy to accept. Many mathematicians resisted it, even feared it. To say that infinities come in sizes felt almost blasphemous. It seemed to stretch reason beyond its limit. And yet Cantor's ideas survived. They became the foundation of modern set theory, the mathematics of infinity. Think of what this means. Infinity itself is infinite in its forms. It is not a single endless road, but a branching forest of endless roads, some wider, some narrower, some beyond any path we can walk. As you lie here tonight, picture yourself boning at the edge of this forest of infinities. Each tree is a different infinity. Some you can count step by step, like stones across a river. Others you cannot count at all. They spread like fog, like stars in a cloudy sky. You do not need to map them. You do not need to understand them fully. It is enough to feel their presence, to sense that even infinity is richer, more varied, more mysterious than our first thought. Cantor himself once wrote that he saw infinity as a reflection of the divine, a glimpse of something beyond human thought. And perhaps that is the deepest gift of his work. Not only the mathematics, but the sense of wonder, the recognition that infinity itself has layers, depths, dimensions. So as you rest, let that thought comfort you. Infinity is not flat. It is not a single endless line. It is a tapestry woven with countless threads, each thread stretching beyond sight. Some infinities you can count, Others you cannot. But all of them whisper the same truth: there is always more. Let yourself drift into that more, into the endlessness beyond endlessness, into the infinities within infinity. Infinity is strange. It behaves in ways that break the rules of ordinary thought, and perhaps no story captures this better than the famous thought experiment known as Hilbert's Hotel. It was imagined by the German mathematician David Hilbert, and though it is only an idea, not a real building, it reveals the playful, puzzling, and endlessly surprising nature of infinity. Close your eyes now and imagine it. You are traveling on a quiet road at night. Ahead you see a hotel glowing softly under the stars. Its sign says simply, Hilbert's Hotel, Infinite Rooms. You enter, and at first it seems like in any other hotel. There is a lobby, warm light, a front desk. But then you realize this building is endless. Corridors stretch without limit. Doors line the walls, each with a number: room 1, room 2, room 3, continuing forever. There is no last room. There is always one more door. Now the hotel is full. Every room is occupied. In an ordinary hotel, this would mean no vacancy. But this is no ordinary hotel. At Hilbert's Hotel, infinity changes the rules. A new guest arrives. What should the manager do? In an ordinary place, there would be no space. But here the manager smiles. He asks every guest to move from their current room and to room n+1. The person in room 1 moves to room 2. The person in room 2 moves to room 3, and so on endlessly. Room 1 becomes free. The new guest is welcomed in. The hotel was full, and yet it made space. Now imagine not just one new guest, but an entire bus arrives with 50 travelers. The manager does not panic. He asks each current guest to move 50 rooms forward. The guest in room 1 goes to room 51. The guest in room 2 goes to room 52, and so on. Now rooms 1 through 50 are free. 50 new travelers enter happily. The hotel is full, and yet it has welcomed 50 more. Now the story grows stranger. A bus arrives not with 50 guests, but with an infinite number of guests. An endless line stretches into the night. Surely now the hotel must fail. But no, the manager has a plan. He asks each current guest in room N to move to room 2N. The person in room 1 moves to room 2. The person in room 2 moves to room 4. The person in room 3 moves to room 6. Every current guest moves to an even-numbered room. Now all the odd-numbered rooms are free. Room 1, room 3, room 5, and so on, stretching endlessly. An infinite number of new guests find a place. The hotel was full, and yet it has welcomed infinity more. This is the strangeness of infinity. Subtract infinity from infinity, and something still remains. Add infinity to infinity, and it is still infinity. Our everyday logic falters here. What seems impossible becomes possible in the landscape of the infinite. Hilbert's Hotel is not a real place, but it is a mirror held up to the infinite sets of mathematics. It shows how infinite collections do not behave like finite ones. An infinite set can be complete and yet still accept more. It can stretch and shift and rearrange without losing its endlessness. Now imagine yourself as a guest inside this hotel. You walk the endless halls, each door numbered, each number leading to another. You never reach the last door because there is no last. The hall continues softly lit, like a dream that never finishes. You pass room 100, room 1000, room 1000,000. Numbers grow, but the hallway stretches further still. The doors march on into the dark, steady, and infinite. There is a strange comfort here. You will never be turned away. No matter how full, the hotel can always welcome you. Infinity has room for everyone. Infinity is generous, spacious, unending. And yet there is also something unsettling. In a world where everything has limits, where space runs out, where time runs out, the thought of a hotel with no end can feel like a dream that refuses to let go. It is both playful and haunting. It is both comforting and mysterious. As you lie here, let yourself drift through this hotel. You walk the halls, but you are not in a hurry. You open a door, and inside is rest, peace, silence. The next door leads to the same, and the next. Every room is safe. Every room welcomes you. There is no last key to turn, no final bed to find. The journey itself is infinite. Hilbert's Hotel whispers a truth: infinity does not behave by our rules. It bends them, reshapes them, makes them strange. And yet in that strangeness, there is beauty. The beauty of a place that is never full. The beauty of a hallway that never ends. The beauty of knowing that there is always space for you, always another door, always another room in the endless quiet of infinity. Infinity is not only in stars, not only in paradoxes, not only in endless hotels of the imagination. It also lives quietly in the very language of modern mathematics, calculus, the art of limits. Close your eyes and imagine standing on a hill at dawn. The ground beneath your feet is curved. The horizon glows faintly. You wonder, if I walk down this hill, how steep will it be? Will the slope be gentle or sharp? To answer you would need to measure the steepness at each point. But how? The hill is continuous, flowing without breaks. To measure precisely, you must shrink your steps smaller and smaller, approaching nothing at all. And in that approach, infinity appears. This is the essence of calculus: to take something smooth and divide it endlessly until what remains is almost nothing, but still something. A slope is measured not by one great leap, but by infinitely many tiny steps, each smaller than the last, each approaching zero. And yet, by adding these steps together, you find the exact steepness, the true curve of the hill. Now think of motion. A ball is thrown into the air. At each moment, its speed changes. How do you measure its path? Again, you divide time into smaller and smaller pieces. 1 second, half a second, a quarter of a second, an eighth, a 16th. As the slices grow smaller, you approach the true story of the ball, and though you never finish the slicing, the infinite process gives you a clear answer. Where the ball is how fast it moves when it will return. Infinity, then, is not chaos. It can be tamed. Through limits, mathematicians found a way to take endless division and make it practical, useful, powerful. This is the art of calculus using infinity, not as a wall, but as a bridge. Now imagine an infinite sum. At first, it seems impossible. How could adding endless numbers give anything but infinity? But listen to this. 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16 plus. The series continues forever, and yet the total does not grow without bound. It approaches 1/2 of a whole, then a quarter more, then an eighth more, then a 16th, each smaller, each gentler, each closer. The steps are infinite, but the sum is finite. This is the subtle paradox of series infinity, of steps, but not infinity of size. Think of pouring water into a glass, but each time you pour half of what remains. At first, the glass fills quickly, then slower still, and though you never finish pouring, the glass eventually fills to the brim. Infinity of pours, but a finite result. This strange dance of infinite processes leading to finite answers is at the heart of calculus. It is why we can measure areas under curves, predict motion of planets, design bridges that stand, create machines that move. Infinity, when guided through limits, becomes a tool, not a terror. Now imagine yourself walking along a coastline. From far above, the coast seems smooth, but as you draw closer, more details appear: bays, inlets, tiny curves. Closer still, you see rocks, then grains of sand. Each step reveals more complexity, more divisions, more detail. In principle, this division continues endlessly, and yet calculus allows us to measure, to say how long the coastline is, how much land it holds back from the sea. Infinity is present, but it does not overwhelm. It serves quietly as a method of understanding. Think also of sound. A single tone is made of vibrations, but complex sounds, music, voices, whispers can be broken down into infinite sums of simple waves. Fourier showed that every sound can be expressed as an infinite series of sines and cosines, and when these are added, the music returns exact and whole. Infinity sings in every note you hear. As you lie here tonight, think of your breath again. Each inhale is like a step in an infinite series. Each exhale another. The series may seem endless, but together they form your life, finite yet infinite, bounded yet unbounded. Calculus then teaches us a gentle lesson. Infinity need not be frightening. It can be shaped, it can be understood step by step, slice by slice, limit by limit. Infinity becomes not a chasm, but a quiet path into clarity. So rest tonight with this thought. Every moment of your life is like a point on a curve. Every heartbeat is a step in an infinite process. And though you may not see the whole line, the whole series, you are part of it. You are carried by it. Infinity lives within you, not as an abyss, but as a rhythm, endless, soft, unbroken. Infinity is not only in numbers, not only in paradoxes, not only in the language of mathematics. It is also in the sky itself. When you look upward, you are staring into the most ancient question of all: is space endless? Close your eyes and picture yourself beneath the night sky. Stars shine like sparks scattered across an endless canvas. You try to imagine the edge. If you traveled far enough, would you find a wall, a boundary, a place where the stars simply stop? Or would you keep going forever with galaxies unfolding endlessly before you? For centuries, people wondered the same thing. Aristotle imagined a finite universe wrapped in crystal spheres. Others imagined an infinite cosmos with no walls, no boundaries. Even today, with telescopes that peer billions of light years into the dark, the question remains alive. Astronomers speak of the observable universe. It is the bubble of space we can see, about 46 billion light years in every direction. Beyond that bubble, light has not yet had time to reach us. But is there more beyond the bubble? Almost certainly, yes. And the thought of it makes the mind tremble, a space without edge, stretching in every direction, larger than thought itself. Now imagine space not only wide, but curved. Einstein showed us that gravity bends space itself. A massive star curves the space around it. The universe, too, has a shape. It may be positively curved, like the surface of a sphere finite, but without boundaries. It may be negatively curved, like a saddle, stretching without end. Or it may be flat, like an endless sheet of paper. The evidence we have today suggests space is almost perfectly flat, which means infinite. Pause here and feel that. You are lying in a bed, in a room in a city. But above you stretches an infinite flatness, a canvas of galaxies without end. Every star you see is only a point in this vastness. And for every star visible, there are billions you cannot see, and billions beyond them still. Infinity in space carries a strange consequence. If the universe is infinite and matter is arranged randomly, then everything that can happen will happen somewhere. There may be another Earth far beyond our reach, identical in every detail. There may be countless versions of you, each living a slightly different life. The infinite makes copies, endless echoes, scattered across the dark. But infinity also humbles us, because in this unending space, our world is only a grain of dust. Our lives, our thoughts, our struggles are small compared to the vastness. And yet the same infinity that makes us small also embraces us. It holds us in its boundless arms, giving us a place inside eternity. As you rest tonight, imagine floating upward, through the roof, past the air, into the stars. Galaxies wheel slowly around you, not ending, not fading, just stretching. You drift not toward a boundary, but into endlessness. There is no wall to reach. There is no final star. There is only more and more and more. And in that endlessness, there is peace, because space does not ask you to measure it. It does not ask you to understand it fully. It simply offers itself silent and infinite, like a sea of light and dark. The boundless universe is not something to solve tonight. It is something to rest inside. You are already in it. You have always been in it. And tonight, as you drift toward sleep, the infinite sky drifts with you, carrying you gently, endlessly, into rest. Infinity does not only stretch across space, it also flows through time. When you look at the ticking of a clock, the rising and setting of the sun, the cycle of seasons, you are touching the mystery of whether time itself has an end or a beginning. Close your eyes and imagine the night sky again. But this time, instead of distance, imagine time as a road. Behind you, it stretches backward, year after year, century after century. Ahead of you, it stretches forward, endless days, endless nights. Does this road have a first stone? Does it have a final step? Or does it extend without end in both directions into forever? In ancient India, sages spoke of yugas, vast cycles of time, measured not in years, but in cosmic ages. One yuga could last millions of years. 4 yugas together made a great cycle, and these cycles turned endlessly, without beginning, without end. Time was not a line, but a wheel, turning, turning, turning. Eternity was not frightening. It was natural, like the breath of the universe. In Greece, philosophers argued. Some believed time had always existed eternal into the past. Others believed it must have a beginning, for how could an infinite series of past moments ever be crossed to arrive at now? This puzzle is called the problem of infinite regress. If the past stretches infinitely behind, how do we ever reach the present? And yet, here we are. Now exists. The paradox remains unresolved, echoing through the centuries. Modern science gave us the Big Bang. About 13.8 billion years ago, space and time themselves seemed to erupt from a single point. Not only matter, not only energy, but time itself had a beginning. There was no before. The road of time started there, or did it? Some theories suggest that the Big Bang was not the first beginning, but only one moment in a larger, endless cycle. A universe that expands, collapses, and expands again like breathing like tides. Other theories propose eternal inflation, where our universe is just one bubble in an infinite froth, each bubble with its own time flowing endlessly. Still others imagine time itself may loop like a circle, repeating endlessly, making beginnings and endings illusions. Now think of the future. Will it ever stop? Will time itself one day reach a wall? Or will it drift forever like an ocean with no shore? Scientists speak of the heat, death of the universe. If expansion continues, stars will burn out, galaxies will drift apart, black holes will fade, and eventually only thin, cold energy will remain. Nothing new will happen. No light, no warmth, no creation. An endless silence time stretching forward forever, but emptied of events. Others imagine the Big Rip. If dark energy grows stronger, space itself could tear apart. Galaxies pulled apart, stars shredded, even atoms ripped open. Time would not end gently, but in a violent tearing, all things dissolving into nothing. Still others imagine endless renewal, new universes budding, new cycles beginning. If so, then time does not march into emptiness, but blossoms endlessly into new forms. As you rest tonight, consider the paradox. If time is infinite behind us, then every story has already been told, every combination lived. If time is infinite ahead, then all possibilities still await each moment, only the beginning of something greater. Infinity in time makes every moment both tiny and vast, a grain of sand, and yet part of a desert without end. Think of your own life. It feels brief, fragile, a handful of decades. But those decades rest inside a river that stretches beyond measure. You are a ripple in eternity. You rise, you fall, but the river continues. The thought can be humbling, but also comforting, because in infinite time, nothing is ever truly lost. Everything flows, transforms, returns. Now breathe slowly. Each inhale, each exhale is part of a rhythm older than stars. Your breath joins the infinite pulse of time itself. You are carried by it, held by it, a small moment, resting in the endless embrace of eternity. So tonight, let the thought of infinite time not trouble you. Do not try to solve its paradoxes. Instead, rest inside them. You are part of forever already. You always have been. And as sleep comes, it is not an ending, but a folding into the eternal rhythm, the endless song of time. Infinity is not only an abstract idea in philosophy or mathematics, it also emerges in the heart of the cosmos, in the strange, mysterious places we call black holes. Here, infinity is not a metaphor. It is a problem, a signal, perhaps even a doorway. Close your eyes and imagine drifting near a star that has burned for billions of years. At last, its fuel runs out. Gravity relentless pulls inward. The star collapses under its own weight. The surface shrinks tighter, denser, hotter, until nothing can resist. And in that collapse, a black hole is born. A black hole is a region where gravity is so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape. From the outside, it looks like darkness, a silent sphere with a boundary called the event horizon. Cross that boundary, and no return is possible. Inside lies the heart of the mystery, the singularity. What is a singularity? It is a point, a center, where equations break down, where density is said to become infinite, where space and time curve without limit, where our physics cannot follow. Here, infinity is not just poetic, it is brutal. It is a wall in the fabric of knowledge. Mathematics predicts singularities. Einstein's general relativity, our best description of gravity, insists that if enough mass is crushed into a small enough space, a singularity forms. But at the same time, relativity cannot describe what happens inside. The equations give infinities nonsensical numbers, impossible answers. Infinity here is a red flag telling us your theory has reached its limit. Now imagine yourself hovering near the horizon of a black hole. From far away, time flows normally, but as you drift closer, strange things happen. Time itself slows. To a distant observer, you appear frozen, never quite crossing the horizon. But from your own view, you fall inward helplessly toward the singularity. Your journey is finite. The whole swallows you in moments. And yet, to the universe outside, your fall lasts forever. Infinity twists time itself. Singularities raise unsettling questions. If density is infinite, does that mean all matter is crushed into nothing? If curvature is infinite, does space itself tear? Or is infinity simply our way of saying we do not yet understand? Physicists search for answers. Some turn to quantum mechanics, the science of the very small. At tiny scales, space and time may not be continuous. They may be granular, pixelated, limited. If so, the singularity may not exist. Instead, matter may compress only to a smallest unit, never truly reaching infinity. Theories like loop quantum gravity or string theory suggest that infinities inside black holes are illusions, artifacts of using incomplete tools. According to these ideas, the singularity is replaced by a bouncing core or a folded surface or strings vibrating at the smallest scale. Infinity is tamed, hidden, avoided. And yet black holes remain mysterious. Some scientists even wonder if they could be bridges. The mathematics of general relativity allows for wormholes, tunnels, connecting distant parts of space, perhaps even other universes. Could the singularity be a gateway, not an end? We do not know. Infinity waits at the threshold. Now think of the paradoxes black holes create. If nothing can escape what happens to information that falls in quantum mechanics, says information cannot be destroyed. But relativity says black holes swallow everything. This conflict is called the information paradox. And once again, infinity lurks at the center. An infinite density and infinite ignorance, a clash between the two greatest theories of physics. Black holes remind us that infinity is not always kind. It is not always poetic. Sometimes it is a crack in the foundation of knowledge, a signal that our maps end here, that the territory is deeper, stranger, more infinite than we thought. As you rest tonight, imagine a black hole not as terror, but as mystery, a dark horizon beneath the stars, a silence that humbles, a singularity that whispers, there is more to know, more to discover, more beyond the limits of thought. And perhaps that is what infinity always does. It breaks our physics, bends our logic, but in doing so, it invites us further. It calls us to continue, even into the dark, even into the unknown, even into the infinite. So close your eyes, drift across the horizon, and let yourself fall gently, endlessly into the mystery. Infinity is not only in the vastness of black holes or the endless sweep of space. It also appears in the tiniest scales of reality, in the quantum world, the strange domain where particles dance, where uncertainty reigns, and where infinity often intrudes like an unwelcome guest. Close your eyes and imagine looking deep, far smaller than the eye can see. Past the cell, past the atom, past the protons and neutrons, down to quarks, and even deeper still. At these scales, the rules of everyday life no longer apply. Here, probability replaces certainty. Particles exist in many places, at once vanish and reappear, flicker like fireflies. And when physicists write the equations to describe these flickers, infinity often leaps out of the mathematics. One example comes from the idea of zero-point energy. Even in the emptiest vacuum space is not truly empty. Quantum fields ripple constantly, particles appear and disappear, borrowing energy for moments before fading away. The vacuum seethes with activity. But when physicists calculate the total energy of this restless vacuum, the answer is shocking infinity. The equations suggest that empty space should contain infinite energy, a result that cannot possibly be real. Reality clearly disagrees, for our universe is not torn apart by boundless energy. Infinity here is a warning sign something in our understanding is incomplete. Another example comes from the self energy of the electron. An electron is tiny, with electric charge concentrated in a point. When you calculate the energy of its own electric field interacting with itself, the answer diverges to infinity. Again, the equations break. Physicists had to invent a method called renormalization, a clever trick of redefining quantities to sweep away the infinities and leave behind results that match experiments with astonishing precision. Renormalization works, but even the greatest physicists admit it feels like sweeping infinity under the rug. At the quantum level, infinities appear again and again. They are not poetic, they are practical obstacles. Each infinity tells us here lies the limit of your theory. Here you must invent something new. Consider the cosmological constant problem. Quantum theory predicts that vacuum energy should be enormous, essentially infinite. But astronomers measure the effect of dark energy, the mysterious force causing the universe to expand faster, and find a value incredibly tiny compared to predictions. The gap is about 120 orders of magnitude, the largest mismatch between theory and observation in all of science. Infinity stands here as a chasm, a gulf that no bridge yet crosses. Some physicists believe the answer may lie at the Planck scale, the smallest meaningful units of length and time. At distances of 10 to the 35 meters and times of 10 to the 44 seconds, our current physics may dissolve. Space and time might not be continuous, but grainy, pixelated like fabric woven of finite threads. If so, infinity may vanish at this deepest layer, replaced by discreteness, by a smallest building block that cannot be divided further. Theories like string theory and loop quantum gravity attempt to tame infinity this way. In string theory, particles are not points, but tiny vibrating strings. Their size softens, infinities spreads them out. In loop, quantum gravity space itself is woven from loops discrete and finite, never truly infinite. Both visions hope to banish singular infinities, to turn them into finite answers. And yet quantum mechanics itself is already full of the flavor of infinity. Think of the wave function, the mathematical cloud, that describes where a particle might be. The cloud spreads endlessly, with probabilities trailing off, but never reaching zero. Every particle is a whisper of infinity spread across space, collapsing only when measured. Think of the double-slit experiment, where a single electron behaves like a wave, passing through two slits at once, interfering with itself. The wave stretches infinitely, only condensing when observed. Infinity here is not a bug, but a feature. It is the natural language of quantum reality. As you rest tonight, picture this strange world. a vacuum buzzing with infinite possibilities, electrons flickering with infinite self-energy, equations overflowing, then tamed by renormalization, a scale where infinity itself may break, giving way to something new. Infinity in quantum physics is not comforting. It is a challenge, but it is also a gift. It reminds us that even in the smallest scales, the world is richer than we can yet imagine. Every atom, every particle, every flicker of light holds mysteries as deep as galaxies. Infinity is not only above, but within. So breathe slowly and let the thought settle. The quantum world hums beneath you, inside you, all around you. It is filled with infinities, tamed and untamed, visible and hidden. And in those infinities, you find a reflection of the vastness, the endless small, mirroring the endless large. Rest now in that thought that you are made of infinities, and yet you are finite. That the tiniest parts of you whisper the same eternal truth as the stars. There is always more, always deeper, always infinite. Let the room grow quiet for a moment. Let the air settle. Tonight we will wander through puzzles that feel like soft knots in the fabric of thought knots tied by infinity itself. We will not hurry to untie them. We will simply trace the threads with gentle fingers, noticing how logic bends and then relaxes again, the way a wave rises and falls without urgency. Begin with a single step. You stand at one side of a room, a wall across from you. To arrive, you first go halfway. Before you finish, you go halfway of what remains. Before that, halfway again. The pieces shrink like crumbs of time, smaller, finer, endless. And yet you walk, you arrive. The mind has performed infinitely many tasks in its picture, and the body has taken only a handful of steps. Here is a paradox that doesn't bite, it only whispers. It says that infinite division can live peacefully inside a finite journey, the way countless raindrops can fit inside a single passing cloud. Picture Achilles, light, fast, laughing, chasing a tortoise that has a head start. Each time he reaches where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved a little on. The story seems to stretch forever, like string pulled from a spool with no end. But the finish line still exists, and the runner still crosses it. The puzzle is not in the world. It is in the way the infinity invites us to slice moments too finely until motion itself seems to fray. When you notice that the paradox softens, it becomes a nighttime companion rather than a threat. Walk now into a strange hotel where every room is taken and still there is always space for you. The manager asks each guest to move from room N to room N+1. A new room opens like a flower at dawn. A bus of 50 guests arrives. The guests shift forward. 50 doors, 50 rooms bloom at the front. An endless line of travelers appears under the stars. The manager doubles every room number, and suddenly all the odd rooms are free, infinitely many of them. The hotel is completely full and forever welcoming a home for contradictions that are not contradictions at all, just the normal manners of the infinite. You feel the comfort of it in a world with edges. There is a place with none where too late and no vacancy simply lose their meanings. Now lie back and ask a more unsettling question. Why is there anything, and what came before it? For every cause, a cause behind it. For every reason, a reason before. The chain feels endless. If you demand a first link, your hand clasps at air. If you accept an unending chain, your feet never find bedrock. The mind wants a foundation. Infinity hands you a horizon. Perhaps there is a first cause that needs none. Perhaps the regress is the foundation itself, a river whose source is not a spring, but the flow. Tonight, you do not have to choose. Let the question be a lullaby of unclosed loops. Step outside in imagination. The sky above is dark, pricked with stars, like frost on glass. If space were infinite and evenly sprinkled with suns, then every line of sight would end on a star and the night would blaze. Instead, there is velvet darkness between the sparks. The universe has its own history. Light has a distance it can travel. Expansion stretches glow into dimness. Infinity does not guarantee brightness. It only guarantees possibility. Even paradoxes can be soothed by time and distance, like embers cooling in the air. Turn a coin between your fingers. Heads, tails, simple. But if you flipped this coin forever, every finite pattern would appear somewhere 10 heads in a row. Your birthday written in binary, the outline of your name hidden in chance. What is nearly impossible becomes inevitable when given infinite trials. Infinity makes room for everything that can be, which is generous and also dizzying. You are unique, and somewhere in the library of possibilities, there are echoes. Let that thought be gentle, not sharp. Each echo still sings with its own breath. And there is a library, at least in a story, where every book that can be written exists, and every book that should never be written as well. Shelves climb without end. Hallways loop like dreams. Most volumes are noise, meaningless letters, tumbling like dry seeds. Yet hidden among them are perfect pages, the story of tonight, the exact pattern of your thoughts, the letter you will never send, but might have. Infinity can drown meaning in quantity, but it can also shelter it. Rare islands of sense float in the ocean of all that could be. You do not need to sail the whole sea to know that such islands exist. Hold now a trumpet that narrows forever without closing the kind drawn in a mathematician's notebook. If you pour paint into its mouth, a finite amount of paint can fill the infinite length volume enough somehow to coat forever. But if you try to paint its surface from end to end, your brush would need an endless supply. A shape with finite volume and infinite area, like a promise that can be fulfilled from within, but not fully covered from without. The paradox asks you to smile and accept that geometry can be as mischievous as any fairy tale. Consider another little trick of infinity, a lamp that turns on at half a minute, to midnight off at a quarter, on at an eighth, off at a 16th, clicking faster, always before midnight, never after. When the clock strikes 12, is the lamp on or off? Every finite glance saw another click coming. The moment of decision sits at the edge of the infinite sequence, like a bead of dew that will not fall. Here, the puzzle is not about switches, but about performing too many actions in too little time. The paradox lives in the borderland, where process meets completion, where our words before and after begin to blur. In a quiet square, a juggler exchanges marbles between two jars, at times growing shorter and shorter, always moving one blue marble out and two red marbles in, then removing more in a pattern that promises abundance. By the final chime, if final chimes can be counted, one jar can end up empty despite endlessly adding. Infinity teaches that more and more can still become nothing at all if removal is arranged with delicate patience. The lesson is not cruelty, it is humility. Sums are not the only way to grow. Order matters. Infinity is sensitive to choreography. You might stretch a sphere upward in imagination, cutting it into pieces so exquisitely wild that they can be rearranged to make two spheres exactly the same size as the first. No stretching, no stretching at all, only slicing and moving, obeying strange rules that allow no measuring tape. It is not something you can do with real matter. It is a dance in the realm of pure sets, where length and volume have not yet been invited to the party. Here, infinity reveals that without the weights and rulers of physical life, space can act like a magician with endless scarves. Glance back at the cosmos that may be endless in size. If there are infinite regions, each with its own roll of cosmic dice, then the problem is not whether something can occur, but how to weigh it among infinitely many occurrences. How do you speak sensibly about how often, when often is unbounded, the measure of likelihood becomes a question of how you count infinities, like asking how loud a choir sings when the choir has no limit and each singer hums a different note? The quiet answer tonight is that some questions are not wrong, they are simply not finished. Infinity asks us not for impatience, but for new instruments. Now return to your breath. Each inhale is a step in a sequence. Each exhale is another. If you could count forever, you would meet every pattern, every run, every return. But you do not need forever to rest. The invitation of these paradoxes is not to solve them all, but to dwell with them for a while, to let their edges soften in the dark. The mind loosens its grip. The knots begin to untie themselves. Think of walking again across the room. You take one step, then another. Somewhere far behind you lies an infinite argument about halves. Somewhere far ahead, a horizon that will always stay a horizon. Between them is your rhythm heel, toe, heel, toe. You do not conquer infinity, you befriend it. You learn its habits and let them amuse you, instruct you, and finally soothe you. If there is a moral, it is this: infinity is not broken logic. It is different logic, wider, stranger, patient. Within it, full can still accept, more finished can still continue, impossible can still happen, nothing can still hide, everything. Let those contradictions settle like snow, each paradox a quiet flake landing on the tongue and melting into clarity. You do not need to keep them all. Keep the feeling instead that the universe is vast enough to hold puzzles without malice and that your mind is gentle enough to rest among them. Close your eyes. The room is the same size as before, but it feels larger now, as if the walls could glide apart if you needed them to. Outside, stars keep their distant counsel. Inside, your breath keeps time with something older than answers. Infinity bends logic, and logic learns to bend back without breaking. In that soft give and take, there is a peace deep enough to sleep in. Hush then. The puzzles will be here in the morning. For now, let the endlessness be kind, and let sleep be your way of agreeing with it. Infinity is not only in numbers, not only in stars, not only in black holes. It also lives inside the mind. It lives in imagination, in memory, in the way we think about beginnings and endings, in the way we dream without borders. Close your eyes and notice how thoughts arrive. One appears, then another follows, then another. They seem endless, flowing like a river that does not know where it begins and does not know where it ends. You might try to trace the very first thought you ever had, or the last thought you will ever think. But the mind does not give you a clear answer. Instead, it offers you an impression of unbroken continuity, a sense that thought itself is infinite. Memory is another place where infinity hides. You recall a moment from childhood, but the memory is not alone. It connects to other moments, which connect to others branching outward, each leading to another scene. Try to reach the very edge of memory, and you find that there is always more behind it, even if it is dim, even if it is shadow. The past inside you stretches like a hallway of mirrors, each reflection leading deeper further into a corridor that never closes. Now imagine the future. You try to picture tomorrow, then the day after, then a month, a year, a decade. Each time you project, you realize you can always go further. There is no final picture. The imagination refuses to stop. The future expands endlessly in your mind, just as the night sky expands above your head. Dreams, too, carry infinity. You fall asleep, and within a dream you walk through a city. You turn a corner and find another street, then another, then another. Each time, the dream creates more, as if it had no map, only a rule to never end. The dream becomes infinite in its own way, offering scenes without limit until you wake. The imagination can even hold infinities within a single instant. Think of the way a piece of music can make you feel that time stretches. A single note seems to last forever. A pause between chords can feel infinite, as though the silence opens a door beyond time. Or think of the way love or grief can fill a moment so completely that it feels boundless. The intensity of feeling makes the finite instant feel like eternity. The human mind reaches for infinity even when it does not intend to. Children often ask questions like, what is beyond the sky? What happens after death? If everything has a cause, what caused the first cause? These are infinite questions, questions without clear edges, and yet they arise naturally, the way breath arises. The mind, it seems, is built to stretch beyond its cage, to lean into the limitless, to ask what cannot be answered. Infinity appears also in art. A painter layers color upon color, each stroke, suggesting more depth, more distance, more sky. The canvas has edges, but the picture feels larger than its frame. A poet writes a line that suggests 100 more. A story ends, and yet you imagine what happens after. Art thrives on the infinite, not by capturing it, but by hinting at it, by letting the imagination continue what the page or the painting cannot. And music, listen to the way a simple melody can circle, repeat, and repeat until you feel it could go on forever. Chants, mantras, lullabies all use this power. They create loops so gentle that you no longer care if they ever stop. You float in the sound as if floating in infinity itself. The imagination of infinity can comfort. When someone you love is gone, the thought that love itself may be infinite eases the pain. The body ends, but the memory continues. The influence continues, the ripple of their life spreads into others. The mind seizes on infinity as a balm, a way to believe that nothing truly disappears. But imagination of infinity can also terrify. To picture eternal punishment, eternal repetition, or eternal emptiness can feel unbearable. The same boundlessness that comforts can also oppress. Infinity has two faces inside the mind, one soft, one hard. It is both the promise of endless beauty and the threat of endless loss. Consider also the way stories of eternity shape cultures. Religions promise eternal life, eternal cycles, eternal return. These promises rest not only in faith, but in imagination. The human mind must be able to imagine infinity in order to desire it. And we do. We imagine heavens without end cycles, without end reincarnations, without end. We imagine the soul as a traveler with no final stop. The power of infinity inside thought is also creative. It drives science. Mathematicians imagine endless numbers. Physicists imagine endless universes. Philosophers imagine endless causes. Without imagination, infinity would remain abstract. But inside the mind, it becomes tangible, felt, motivating. And yet the mind cannot hold infinity fully. When you try to picture it, it slips. When you try to measure it, it dissolves. You can walk closer, but the horizon moves away. This too is part of the paradox. The mind is finite, yet it cannot stop reaching for the infinite. Think now of your own thoughts as you lie here. They come one after another, and there seems to be no last one. Even as you drift into sleep, thoughts become dreams, dreams become shadows, shadows become silence. But even silence is not empty. It is full of potential, full of the possibility of more. The mind never truly stops. It flows into infinity the way a river flows into sea. You might ask, is the infinite inside us or outside us? The answer may not matter. The stars stretch forever outward. The mind stretches forever inward. The two infinities meet in you as if you are a bridge between them. Your thoughts echo the stars. The stars echo your thoughts. Infinity mirrors itself, so let this reflection settle. You are finite, and yet you carry infinity in your mind. You are bounded, and yet you reach beyond boundaries. You are a moment, and yet you imagine eternity. This is not contradiction. This is the way of being human. To live is to lean toward infinity, to touch it lightly, to let it remind you of more. As sleep gathers, you let the endless flow of thought slow. Do not fear that there is no last word. Do not chase the first word. Allow the river to carry you without end. Infinity in the mind is not a burden tonight. It is a lullaby, a song without end, guiding you gently into rest. Infinity can be a friend. It can also be a shadow. When we hold it in our thoughts, it sometimes feels like a gentle blanket, wrapping us in endless possibility. At other times, it feels like a storm without end, a vastness too heavy to carry. Infinity is not only mathematics or philosophy, it is an emotional weight, a presence that comforts and unsettles, a double edged mirror in the heart of human beings. Think first of comfort. Imagine lying under the night sky. You see stars beyond counting, and the thought that there is no edge brings peace. If the universe has no walls, then there is always space. If time has no ending, then every moment can be part of something larger, something that does not die. This sense of boundlessness can be soothing. It makes life feel less fragile, less small. You are no longer a single candle flickering alone. You are part of an endless constellation. Comfort also comes from memory. A loved one is gone, yet you think of infinity and it tells you nothing is ever truly lost. Every action ripples outward forever. Every kindness continues woven into new lives, new stories. Even pain transforms, never disappearing, only becoming part of a greater whole. Infinity reassures us that endings are not final. They are doorways into something else. Comfort comes too from love. When you feel love, it seems to stretch endlessly, as though there is no bottom to the well of feeling. Parents looking at their child speak of a love without end. Lovers whisper promises of forever. These are not exaggerations. They are natural attempts to describe something that feels infinite. And in these moments, infinity is soft, sweet, a presence that makes the heart feel at home. But infinity has another face. It can frighten. It can press upon the mind like a weight too great to hold. When you imagine eternity not as joy, but as repetition without relief, the idea becomes unbearable. To live the same cycle again and again with no exit, no final rest, this is a nightmare of infinity. What comforts in one shape terrifies in another. Think of the fear of eternal punishment. Religions across the world have imagined hells that last forever. The thought that pain could continue endlessly with no hope of ending fills the heart with dread. The human mind can bear suffering if it knows there will be release. But suffering without release feels heavier than death. Here, infinity is not comfort, but cruelty. Even the thought of eternal life can bring unease. What would it mean to live without end, to never stop to see centuries flow like rivers, while you remain? Would joy eventually fade? Would boredom or weariness grow until existence itself felt like a burden? Sometimes the idea of infinity in time, even if filled with peace, can feel like too much. The mind longs for closure as much as it longs for continuation. Infinity also carries the fear of insignificance. Look again at the night sky. The stars are endless. Galaxies stretch beyond sight. In the face of such immensity, the human self feels tiny, almost nothing. Infinity can make you feel swallowed, erased, as though your life could not possibly matter in such a vast ocean. What is one breath compared to eternity? What is one heartbeat compared to infinity? This fear of smallness is real. It visits those who lie awake at night, staring into dark ceilings, imagining the endless universe beyond. The thought can feel like falling into a void without bottom. Infinity in this form is not soft, but cold, not a blanket, but an abyss. And yet both faces are true. Infinity comforts because it stretches beyond endings. Infinity frightens because it removes all boundaries. We need edges. We build our lives around beginnings and endings, the start of a story, the close of a day, the arc of a lifetime. Without edges, we lose our shape. Infinity dissolves borders, and the loss of borders can feel like the loss of meaning. But perhaps the secret is not to choose one face over the other. Perhaps the gift of infinity is that it shows us both at once. It tells us that comfort and fear are not opposites but companions. The endless sky is both beautiful and terrifying. Eternal love is both inspiring and overwhelming. The vastness of time is both reassuring and unsettling. Infinity is not one thing. It is the mirror that reflects both sides of our hearts. So how do we live with it? We do not solve infinity. We rest beside it. We learn to hold both feelings at once, the comfort and the fear, the light and the shadow. We learn that our smallness is real, but our smallness is also part of something grand. We learn that endings do happen, but they are folded into something larger that does not end. Imagine holding a seashell to your ear. You hear a sound like the ocean. It comforts you because it seems endless, because it seems eternal. But listen too long, and you may feel uneasy, lost in the vast roar. The ocean is both balm and danger. So too is infinity. As you lie here, notice both faces. Infinity is the warmth of memory, the promise of love, the gentle horizon that makes death less frightening. Infinity is also the abyss, the endless repetition, the overwhelming vastness that makes life feel small. And yet, in holding both, the mind finds balance. Comfort tempers fear, fear deepens comfort. So let infinity tonight be both. Let it remind you that you are small, and that is not shameful. Let it remind you that you are part of something endless, and that is beautiful. Let it remind you that time stretches without end, but that every moment is precious because of it. Let it remind you that fear itself can soften when held gently, when seen as part of the whole. And as sleep gathers around you, let comfort be the last sensation. Let fear dissolve into the quiet. Infinity remains, but it no longer threatens. It hums softly in the background, like a deep note that steadies the song of your breath. The infinite is vast, but you do not need to carry it. You only need to rest inside it. Infinity does not live only in mathematics or physics. It also lives in art, in poetry, in the lines and shapes that humans have drawn for thousands of years to represent what has no end. When we speak of infinity in art and symbol, we are speaking of how human beings try to hold the unholdable, how we turn the endless into images that can be carried, worn, remembered. Close your eyes and imagine the most familiar symbol, the sideways figure 8 looping forever. Two curves fold into one another, twisting gently, never crossing, never ending. It is simple, a single line, and yet it carries the weight of eternity. You can trace it with your finger endlessly, and you will never leave the path. This symbol has traveled across cultures, from ancient Indian carvings to modern jewelry, from sacred manuscripts to children's doodles. Why? Because it whispers of continuity. It says there is no break, no wall, no final stop. But the infinity symbol is not the only one. Look at the circle, one of the oldest shapes in human art. The circle has no beginning, no end. It rolls, it encloses, it repeats. It is the sun in the sky, the moon at night, the wheel of the seasons. Long before anyone drew a sideways 8, the circle already carried infinity within it. Every time someone drew the sun, they were sketching eternity. Every time they traced the moon, they were tracing endlessness. In Eastern traditions, the circle became the enso, a brushstroke painted in a single breath. Sometimes the circle is closed, representing wholeness, the infinite contained. Sometimes it is left open, representing the infinite flowing incomplete alive. The Enso is a meditation on infinity that fits in the palm of a hand. It shows that the boundless can be glimpsed in a single stroke of ink. Infinity has also been symbolized by knots. Celtic knots twist and weave without start or finish, interlacing patterns that go on forever. In Buddhism, the endless knot represents the interconnectedness of all things, a loop that never stops showing how cause and effect ripple without end. Knots remind us that infinity is not only a line forward, but also a web, an interconnection that cannot be undone. Now think of architecture. Ancient temples were built in spirals, mandalas, carved into stone floors, labyrinths, drawn on walls and gardens. Each design invites the eye to follow a path that curves endlessly inward or outward or around itself. Walking a labyrinth was often a spiritual practice, to walk in circles, not to arrive somewhere new, but to lose yourself in repetition, to touch infinity through motion. Music, too, is filled with symbols of infinity, a repeating chant, a round sung by voices entering one after another, a rhythm that circles without end. These are audible symbols of the eternal. The sound does not stop. It loops back into itself. In this way, music carries the same endlessness as the circle, but in time instead of space. Writers and poets have always searched for symbols to hold infinity. Shakespeare spoke of the sands of time, a metaphor that suggests endless grains, each one a moment. Mystics spoke of oceans, deserts, skies, places so vast that the human mind cannot grasp them. Every metaphor of endlessness is a kind of symbol, an attempt to turn the invisible into something felt. Think of mirrors. Place two mirrors dead facing each other, and you see a corridor stretching without end. Artists and filmmakers use this effect to evoke infinity, a simple trick, but one that awakens deep response. The eye knows the mirrors are small, the hallway an illusion, and yet the image stirs something older, the recognition of endless regress. Infinity does not need to be real to feel true. In sacred art, infinity often takes the form of light. Halos around saints radiant, mandalas, spirals of flame. These are symbols of the boundless shining through the finite. Light itself suggests infinity because it travels outward without end. A single candle can be imagined to cast its glow forever. A single star suggests a sky filled with countless others. Even the alphabet of modern mathematics is filled with symbols that point towards infinity. The sign is only one of them. Limits approaching without reaching arrows stretching to the right summations that never end. All of these are written symbols, art made of numbers. Every equation that contains is an artist's sketch of infinity. The human desire to symbolize infinity comes from need. The concept itself is too large to hold in words, too vast to feel directly. But a circle, a knot, a mirrored hallway, these are small containers. They give the heart a way to touch the endless without drowning in it. They are doors left slightly open enough for us to glance inside. Infinity in art is not always gentle. Sometimes it is overwhelming. The painter Escher drew staircases that looped forever, hands drawing themselves waterfalls that flowed in circles. These pictures make the mind dizzy. They show infinity as paradox, a world where up and down twist endlessly, where logic folds back on itself. Such symbols reveal the unsettling side of the boundless. It can disorient as much as it can inspire. Yet even here, there is beauty. The paradox is part of the symbol's power. A never-ending staircase tells us something profound, that imagination itself has no ceiling, that the human mind can create patterns that do not exist in nature, yet feel true because they echo the rhythm of infinity. Symbols of infinity remind us of cycles, the turning of the year, the rising and setting of the sun, the rhythm of breath, the beating of a heart. These are lived symbols, everyday signs that we are woven into something without end. The circle of a wedding ring worn on the hand says more than words. It promises that love will be endless even though human lives are finite. Infinity here becomes not an abstract number, but a vow, a hope, a story told in metal and skin. And so infinity in art is both decoration and meditation. It is beautiful to look at, but it is also a practice. Tracing the endless knot, following the brushstroke of the enso humming the loop of a chant. These are ways of participating in the infinite. Art gives us symbols so that infinity is not only thought about, but touched. Tonight, as you rest, think of the infinity sign not as a cold equation, but as a soft path for the mind. Let it loop and loop gently, endlessly. Think of circles of knots of lights that radiate without end. Think of mirrors opening hallways that stretch beyond sight. Think of music that repeats without tiring. These are not just symbols, they are invitations. They invite you to step into a rhythm larger than yourself, to rest in a shape that has no edge. Infinity in art and symbol tells us one last truth, that the human heart cannot live without images of the endless. We need reminders of eternity. We need ways to hold what we cannot hold. And so we draw, we carve, we sing, we write. We leave traces of infinity everywhere, like footprints on a shore that has no end. Close your eyes now. The symbol remains. The circle rolls. The knot weaves. The figure eight loops quietly. Infinity hums inside your imagination, soft and steady, guiding you into rest. Infinity is not only a mystery to be observed, it is also a teacher. When we sit quietly with the thought of the endless lessons, begin to surface lessons that shape how we live, how we think, how we love, and how we let go. Infinity does not lecture. It does not shout. It teaches by presence, by the way it makes us feel small, and yet connected, fragile, and yet part of something boundless. One of the first lessons is humility. Look at the stars on a clear night. You see how small your life seems compared to galaxies upon galaxies, each one holding billions of suns. Infinity teaches you that you are not the center. The world does not revolve around your story. And yet, in that smallness, there is a strange comfort. You do not have to carry everything. You are part of a larger whole, and that whole will continue, whether or not you struggle to hold it. Humility is not humiliation. It is the relief of remembering that you are not everything. Another lesson is patience. Infinity stretches beyond time. It does not hurry. When you feel rushed, when minutes press against you, infinity reminds you that there is always more. More space, more time, more unfolding. Every moment is part of a longer story. You can breathe. You can slow down. The endless horizon does not demand you to finish quickly. It invites you to rest in the journey itself. Infinity also teaches creativity, because when you imagine infinity, you realize there are infinite possibilities. Every idea can lead to another and another and another. The human imagination is a reflection of the endless. It never truly runs out. Artists, writers, musicians draw upon this lesson all the time. They sense that no story is final, no melody is last, no painting is complete. There is always another version, another variation, another way to see. Infinity says, do not fear limits of imagination, for imagination itself is infinite. There is also the lesson of acceptance. Infinity reminds us that endings are not really endings. When something changes, when something is lost, the infinite tells us that it has not vanished, it has transformed. Every wave that falls back into the sea is not gone. It is part of the ocean again. Every person who leaves this world remains in memory, in influence, in matter that continues to flow through the universe. Infinity teaches us to release our grip, to trust that nothing ever fully disappears. Change is not destruction, it is transformation within the endless. Infinity whispers of perspective. When we are caught in worry, in anger, in fear, the problems feel huge. But in the scale of the infinite, they become small ripples. They still matter to us, but they no longer define the universe. This perspective does not erase pain, but it eases it. It reminds us that storms pass even when they feel like forever. Against infinity, even forever is not forever. Another lesson from infinity is wonder. To gaze into what has no end is to be reminded that reality is always larger than what we see. The unknown is not empty, it is full of possibility. Infinity teaches curiosity, the willingness to ask without needing final answers. Why is there something rather than nothing? What lies beyond the universe? What is time beyond time? Infinity does not answer these questions. It teaches us that asking them is itself part of the beauty. Infinity also teaches balance between fear and comfort. It shows us both faces at once. We feel tiny and we feel infinite. We feel fragile and we feel eternal. We are temporary, yet we belong to something timeless. This duality becomes a lesson in holding contradictions without breaking. Life itself is full of opposites: joy and sorrow, gain and loss, love and grief. Infinity shows us that opposites can live together, and meaning comes from the tension between them. From infinity, we learn reverence. The endless is sacred, not because it belongs to any one religion, but because it awakens awe. When you contemplate infinity, you bow without meaning to. You feel your breath slow, your heart soften. This is reverence, a recognition that something exists beyond grasp, beyond measure, beyond ownership. Infinity teaches humility not just toward the cosmos, but toward life itself. Infinity teaches generosity, because when you realize that there is no limit, you also realize that giving does not reduce. Sharing love, sharing kindness, sharing time, they are not diminished by use. Like flame lighting another flame, the act of giving creates more, not less. Infinity is abundance. It whispers that scarcity is not the only truth, that the endless nature of love and compassion can overflow without running dry. Another quiet lesson is presence. Infinity is vast, but it is also in each moment. When you breathe, you touch something that has no end, the cycle of in and out repeated endlessly through life, through generations. When you listen to the sound of wind, you hear a pattern that has played for millions of years. Infinity teaches that the eternal is not far away. It is here in the smallest act, in the simplest sound, in the quiet between words. Infinity teaches courage, because to face what has no end requires strength. It requires stepping into mystery without map, trusting the road even when you cannot see its end. Life is filled with unknowns. Infinity tells you that unknowns are not flaws, they are the fabric of reality. You do not need to see the whole path. You only need to take the next step. Infinity gives courage, not by removing fear, but by showing that fear is part of the endless too. Infinity teaches gratitude. For when you imagine eternity, you see how precious each moment becomes. A single hour of laughter shines brighter when seen against the endless stretch of time. A single hug becomes infinite in memory carried forward forever. Infinity shows us that what is finite can be precious because it is framed by the infinite. The endless does not swallow the small, it magnifies it. And perhaps the deepest lesson is mystery itself. Infinity cannot be solved. It cannot be closed, packaged, completed. It always stretches beyond reach. This teaches us to live without full control, to accept that life is partly unknowable. The mystery itself becomes the lesson that not everything is meant to be answered, that wonder can remain wonder, and that is enough. So tonight, as you rest, let infinity teach you. Let it remind you of humility, of patience, of creativity, of acceptance. Let it show you perspective, wonder, balance, reverence, generosity, presence, courage, gratitude, and mystery. You do not need to hold all the lessons at once. They will return again and again each time you glance at the endless sky, each time you breathe deeply, each time you love without measure. Infinity is not only far away, it is beside you now, a teacher sitting quietly, waiting for you to listen. Let its lessons drift into you, gentle as sleep. The endless does not demand an effort, it only invites surrender. Rest and learn in silence. Infinity will still be here when you wake. Infinity offers not only comfort, not only fear, not only lessons. It also places us in front of a deeper paradox, the paradox of meaning. Because when faced with something endless, we must ask, if everything goes on forever, does anything truly matter? And at the same time, if nothing ever ends, does that not make everything infinitely precious? Think first of the possibility of meaning dissolving. If the universe is infinite, then every event will repeat somewhere, sometime. Every word spoken, every life lived, every story told will appear again in another corner of endless space. Does that not make each individual life less significant? If there are infinite copies of you, infinite echoes of every choice, how can one matter more than another? Infinity seems to flatten uniqueness, to dissolve importance into an endless ocean of repetitions. This thought can be heavy. It can make life feel like sand slipping through fingers, countless grains, indistinguishable. Why try? Why struggle? Why love? If the infinite will contain every possible version anyway, the paradox of meaning begins with this question. Infinity both inspires awe and threatens to erase value, and yet turn the thought a little, and another truth appears. If infinity means there are endless possibilities, then each moment is infinitely rare. This exact arrangement, this breath, this night, this thought exists only here, only now. Yes, there may be echoes elsewhere, but no echo replaces the original. The uniqueness of a moment shines brighter when set against the endless backdrop. A single star does not lose its light because there are countless others. Instead, it becomes part of a vast constellation. Meaning then is not erased by infinity, it is transformed. The finite becomes meaningful because it is finite within the infinite. Your life matters not because it is the only one, but because it is yours, carried here, lived now. Infinity is not an eraser, it is a canvas. Each brushstroke may be small, but without it, the picture would not be whole. Think of art. A single poem does not lose worth because thousands of poems exist. A song does not become meaningless because other songs are sung. Each creation, each expression, each gesture has value because it is part of a tapestry too large to see in full. Infinity provides the backdrop that makes the small shimmer. The paradox of meaning becomes a paradox of magnification, but the paradox deepens still. If infinity contains all possibilities, then even absurd or trivial events are guaranteed somewhere. A coin flipped endlessly will spell your name in binary, then someone else's, then everyone's. Does this not reduce meaning to mere inevitability, stripping events of significance? Perhaps not. Perhaps meaning is not in rarity, but in presence. It is not about how often something occurs, but about how it occurs to you in your lived experience. Infinity may promise everything, but you only live one thread through it. And that thread has meaning because you are the one holding it. Think of love again. In an infinite universe, there may be endless versions of every love story. But that does not make your love less real. It makes it part of a greater ocean of love and endless flowering. Each connection remains sacred precisely because it is felt here in this body, in this heart. The paradox of meaning softens when you see that repetition does not cancel, it multiplies. Infinity also raises the question of purpose. If life stretches without end, what goal can be final? If there is always more, then completion is impossible. But perhaps purpose is not a finish line. Perhaps purpose is the walk itself, the rhythm of steps. Meaning arises not at the end, but in the motion. Infinity teaches that there is no final answer, only the ongoing search, the continuing journey. The paradox of meaning becomes the practice of meaning, and yet doubt remains. The endless can make us feel small, lost in corridors, with no exit. But smallness can also be sacred. Think of a single grain of sand on a beach. It is one of uncountable, yet it can still be placed in a ring held in a hand, treasured as memory. Infinity does not demand that we erase smallness, it asks that we honor it. The paradox of meaning is also seen in death. If time is infinite, then each life is short, a flash. Does this make life meaningless? Or does it make life urgent? Precious, bright infinity places mortality in sharper focus. It reminds us that even within the endless, each flame matters. The brevity of life is what makes its meaning glow. Consider again the night sky. If there were only one star, it would be lonely. If there were a handful, they might not inspire awe. But the countless stars together awaken wonder, not despair. Their multitude does not erase meaning, it deepens it. Each star is part of the story of light. Each human life is part of the story of existence. Infinity makes meaning not smaller, but larger by stretching the canvas on which it shines. So, what then is the paradox of meaning? It is the tension between insignificance and preciousness, between repetition and uniqueness, between endlessness and urgency. Infinity threatens to erase meaning and at the same time ensures it. Meaning is fragile in the face of the infinite, but it is also indestructible because it arises from presence. Tonight, as you listen, let this paradox be gentle. Do not fear that infinity cancels your life. Do not fear that endlessness swallows significance. Instead, feel how each breath glows brighter against the infinite horizon. Feel how your story is woven into a fabric that will never fray. Feel how meaning does not depend on being the only one, it depends on being lived right now. Infinity and meaning are not enemies, they are partners. The infinite provides the backdrop, the stage, the endless canvas. The finite provides the story, the color, the spark. Without infinity, meaning would have no stage. Without finitude, infinity would have no song. Together they create the paradox that keeps us awake and soothes us to sleep. Close your eyes now. Rest in the thought that your life is both tiny and immeasurable, both fleeting and eternal. Infinity hums quietly around you, not to erase meaning, but to cradle it. You are part of the endless, and because of that, your moments shine brighter. You do not need to solve the paradox, you only need to live it. And in that meaning becomes infinite. Infinity is not something to be solved. It is not a problem to be completed or a riddle to be answered. It is a horizon, always before us, always receding as we move forward, always inviting us onward into a journey that never ends. When you look at the horizon on the sea, you see a line that seems like an edge. You walk toward it, you sail toward it, but you never reach it. It moves as you move, stretching away, keeping its distance. Infinity is like this horizon. It is not a destination. It is an invitation to continue to walk, to wonder, to grow. The journey into infinity begins the moment you ask a question without answer. What is beyond the stars? What came before time? What lies after death? These questions are not meant to be closed. They are doors that open into the endless. To step through them is to walk into infinity itself. Infinity as horizon also means that knowledge is never complete. Science has mapped galaxies, measured particles, traced the curve of space and time. Yet each discovery reveals a further horizon, another mystery waiting. The map grows, but it never fills the territory. Infinity teaches us that the territory itself has no final edge. The journey of learning is infinite. Every answer is not a stop, but a step further. This can be humbling. You may wish for certainty, for final ground, but infinity reminds us that certainty is temporary, that ground always opens into more ground. What you know today will grow tomorrow. What you believe finished will reveal new paths. Infinity is generous in this way. It ensures that curiosity will never die because there will always be more to see. The horizon is also personal. In your own life, there is always another horizon. When you reach one dream, another appears. When you close one chapter, another begins. You never truly arrive. You only continue. This might sound exhausting, but it is also beautiful. It means that growth has no ceiling. It means that love has no final form. It means that your story is part of a larger story that has no last page. Think of memory again. Even as you recall one moment, others stir. Each memory connects to more and more and more. Your inner horizon stretches. The same is true for imagination. When you picture tomorrow, it opens to a week, to a year, to a lifetime, to eternity. Infinity as horizon lives in your own mind. It is not only in the stars, it is in the way thought itself unfolds. Infinity as horizon also comforts in endings. When someone you love is gone, it may feel final, but the horizon tells you there is more. The story does not close. The love continues in memory, in ripple and influence. Death itself becomes a door, not a wall. Infinity is the horizon that softens loss because it shows that no path truly ends, it only changes direction. But the horizon can also be unsettling. To know that there is no final arrival can make you feel restless. We long for closure, for arrival, for certainty. Infinity withholds that. It tells us that every arrival is temporary, every certainty provisional, and yet this is its gift. For if the journey never ends, then life itself is the journey. Meaning does not wait at a finish line. Meaning is in the walking, in the seeing, in the becoming. Infinity as horizon teaches acceptance of mystery. You cannot capture it. You cannot own it. You can only walk toward it, step by step, knowing it will move away, knowing that is the point. The endless is not meant to be reached. It is meant to be lived alongside, to be companion, to be reminder. Think of a child asking questions. Why is the sky blue? Why do we dream? Why is there something rather than nothing? Each answer leads to more questions, and the questions never stop. This is the horizon at work, the endless unfolding of wonder. To be human is to live with that unfolding, to cherish it rather than fear it. Infinity as horizon also tells us about time. We are used to clocks, to minutes, and hours, to beginnings and endings. But infinity whispers that time is larger, that the future stretches without limit, that the past ripples behind without end. You are walking a thread through a fabric too large to see a pattern that stretches forever. The horizon is there, reminding you that there is always more thread to follow, more pattern to glimpse. Even in silence, infinity remains. When the mind grows quiet, when thoughts fade, the horizon still exists. It is there, like a faint line, at the edge of awareness waiting. Infinity is not gone when you sleep. It moves with you into dreams, into stillness, into the deep rest of night. The horizon is never erased. It is always before you like a quiet promise. So how do we live with this horizon? We do not chase it endlessly as though we must catch it. We walk with it. We let it guide us not as a finish, but as a companion. Infinity does not demand exhaustion. It offers companionship for the road, a reminder that there is always more to discover, more to imagine, more to love. Close your eyes and picture the sea. The line between water and sky drifts far away. You cannot reach it, but it calms you. It tells you that the world is open, that there is no end to the path. This is infinity as horizon, not a wall, but an opening, not an answer, but a song. Tonight let this horizon rest inside you. Do not worry about reaching it. Do not fear that you cannot. It is enough to walk, to breathe, to imagine. Infinity will remain steady and patient, waiting just beyond like a horizon painted on the edge of your dreams.